the class is now live on YouTube as well. So you can actually share the YouTube link to your friends if you want. I'm sorry, this is the first class, so I'm just trying to get hold of a few things. Oh, Maitri Shankar, hi. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Okay, good to see you. And that's Sangeeta. Hi, Sangeeta.
Yeah.
Hi, we are just going to begin our chocolate chip cookie class. Are any of you going to cook along with me today?
Since this was the first I love
Sure. So I guess it's the first time around for all of you for an online class. So maybe from the next class onwards you can get comfortable and we can cook along together. So you're just going to watch me cook, if I'm right.
I guess so.
Okay. So I'm assuming all of you are from India itself?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. There were a lot of requests for, so have all of you done baking before, or how is it? I mean, or is it just that you want to learn something new and you've come to the cooking class?
Well, I'm a first timer.
Sangeeta, you're a first timer, and Simrita, have you done baking before? I can't hear. No, not been so lucky in baking. Okay, Simrita has a low audio. I mean, I think her mic is not working, so she's been chatting on the left side, so you can see her chats on the left-hand side window. So people who are not able to communicate well, I can read your chats if you are posting. Ruchi Pagla, my voice is breaking, Ruchi?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can't hear you very clear.
Okay, so you might want to change your, and Kalashree has done some baking. You might want to change your bandwidth settings. Maybe if you're, I have a very high bandwidth, so maybe if you, in the settings you can change it to, low or something like that. Okay, so let's begin our class. So I have shared with all of you the recipe. I'm going to share it once again. Have I through my website link? I have created a recipe. So let's see. Did all of you get the recipe by email? But nevertheless, here is the recipe on the left. I have posted the recipe so you can keep track of the link. So for making, you can ask me questions if you are not able to hear me. So please, you can talk and message me as well. I'm going to mute some of you so you probably don't have echoes coming in. And if you want to talk, maybe you can raise your hands and I can unmute all of you so that there is less of, people can hear me clearly, and if you have to say something, you can also use the chat window. Excellent. So for the thing with cookies, there are two types of cookies that you can make. One is a cookie which is crisp and buttery, and the other is a chewy cookie which is typically American. The crisp buttery cookies are butter cookies from the Europe, and the chewy cookies are the American version, usually the McDonald's style of cookies. And the chewy cookies contain eggs, but today I'm going to do an eggless version because I have had more than a lot of people requested for an eggless cookie. There is absolutely no difference between the two, it's just that I would remove the egg. By removing the egg, the texture of my cookie will change. Egg gives a little bit of chewy, like the cake-like structure, the texture, which is a little more softer and not crisp. But when you remove the egg, it will have a crisp yet crunchy and soft melt-in-the-mouth texture. That's because of the butter. Yes, there is a lot of butter that goes into the cookie, but yes. So let's begin. Here is my butter. I'm going to use quarter cup of butter for my cookies. I use unsalted butter for my cookies. In India it's called the cooking butter, and it's you're anywhere else in the world, it's also called as the unsalted butter. So, and that's a packet of 500 grams. I'm going to use I've let the butter sit out a little bit, so it's not melted completely, but it is soft. I like my butter to be a little soft, so it helps in beating the sugar and the butter evenly into a nice creamy texture. Am I going too fast? Is everybody able to hear me?
That's fine.
No, it's okay.
You're all okay?
Yeah.
Okay. If there's any questions, you all can talk. So this is I'm going to take, I use cup measurements, and these are typically US or UK cup. Either one works well. You can also convert the cup measurements to grams if you have a weighing scale and you don't have cups. It's easy to Google. Just type half cup of butter to grams in Google and it will give you a conversion rate. So it's as simple as that. Because each, like for example, a solid like butter would be about, it would weigh differently from a flour, it would weigh differently from a sugar. The weight in terms of measurement will be different. So, and I'm going to use I like to use a mixer for making my cookies, but if you don't have a mixer, you can also use a bowl and a hand mixer and cream up the the butter and the sugar together. So I have a KitchenAid's stand mixer. So I'm going to add a quarter cup, get some spoons, the half cup of butter. Here I've mentioned brown sugar and white sugar. I'm using a little bit of the recipe. I've kind of modified the recipe from the website a little bit. I will post the updated recipe once we're done. I'm using half cup of butter, a quarter cup of white sugar, and a quarter cup of jaggery. Brown sugar, I like to use a little bit of health ingredients as well once in a while to make it more nutritious. You can use whole thing to be jaggery, which is more nutritious than as opposed to white sugar, refined sugar. And it might alter the taste a little bit, but the texture shouldn't change as much. So it should be okay because you have a good amount of butter that goes into making the cookie. So there goes our jaggery and the sugar. So I'm going to beat these together now. So I'm going to beat the butter and sugar until.
So how much time should we whisk? For how much time should we whisk the sugar and butter?
If you don't have a stand mixer like that, you could also use a hand mixer. These are available as well. It's quite fancy. It doesn't cost as much in India, and it has two things which works really well. It's just that you have to hold when you're making large quantities of cookies. Holding it for a specific period of time just takes a lot of time. So this is good. Or a traditional, the most ancient bowl and a mixer, okay? A ladle to mix your cookie, the butter and sugar. So mixing, so now that took me approximately 30 seconds to actually beat the butter and sugar. So they both are actually combined into being quite creamy. I'm not sure if you can see it. Let me get it closer to the camera. So that's creamy. To this, I'm going to add some vanilla essence. Do any of you have any questions? You can stop and ask.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
How long should you beat it for? Should the sugar become completely melted?
Yes. So you beat it until the sugar and the butter are creamy. So the sugar need not have. So now you use different types of sugars. Some sugars are granulated. In India, sugar crystals come in, sugar comes in large crystals, whereas in other countries, sugar comes in smaller crystals. I like to use caster sugar for baking cakes, but I like to use the normal granulated sugar for cookies just because I like that little crunchiness of the sugar in the cookie. If you like that, then it's fine. If you like it to be smooth, then you can use the caster sugar, or you can powder the sugar to some coarse texture and beat it along with butter. So what happens is it will be like cream. It's like cream. If you notice now, that's jaggery, because the color of jaggery, the sugar has, the butter color has changed. Yeah, so that's creamy. So Kalashree has a question. In most places where they sell milk in all Nandini products, you will usually find Nandini cooking butter. Did you say we can use jaggery? Yes. So Nandini is a cooking butter in India, and that is in Bangalore. But Amul also sells cooking butter. Then there is cooking butter is nothing but butter that is unsalted. It's not table butter. Table butter is butter that has salt, and cooking butter is unsalted butter which does not have salt. And it can also be used for making ghee. I have another new person here, and that's Raghuram Ashok. Hi Raghuram, good to see you. Okay, so we're going to add some vanilla essence. I added about half a teaspoon. I just measured it with my eye. You can use a teaspoon measurement. I do have spoon measurements. These are actually good to have. When you're baking, it's good to go by really good measures. The reason being, you know that you're going to, if you overdo on the butter, your cookie might crumble way too much. It's not going to hold together. So it's really important to measure your ingredients. Now, one more thing I have to mention is the flour in every place differs. Making cookies or cakes or baking also depends upon the temperature of the place where you are in. If it is a very warm place, the amount of butter that you need would probably be a little more or less, because the butter, there's moisture in the air which tends to get the ingredients together. So now if you're living in a cold place, and so there is a difference. So a little bit of experiment. As you keep experimenting, you'll understand that temperatures in cooking matters, and baking matters a little bit. So now we're going to, we added a vanilla essence. I'm going to make the eggless cookie today. So, and then now it's 1 cup of all-purpose flour. But here with me I have traditional recipes will tell you 1 cup, but I like to mix the 50-50 of both. You can use whole wheat flour as well. You can use ragi flour, and you can use millet. You can add your oats. You can add many things. Everything will remain the same. But if it's 1 cup of flour,
there's all this
you can make quarter cup of oats, quarter cup of ragi, quarter cup of wheat, quarter cup of this. Then you have a whole grain chocolate chip cookie. So it's important here. Binding ingredients is your butter essentially. So butter is what binds these together, and you will understand over time of continuous baking that the amount of butter will vary with respect to different types of flours. Because a lot of, like for example, all-purpose flour, that is maida, and wheat flour together will take approximately the same amount of butter. The moment you bring in heavy grain ingredients like oats or ragi, then the amount of butter that could take, you might see that the cookie is dry after you bake it, and you could have taken a little more butter, so you can add that.
Before baking, would we be able to know that?
Before baking, you will not be able to know that. So hence, I'm giving you a basic recipe, so which you can, and then you experiment in your kitchen. So once you, at your first go, I always suggest follow a recipe. If you're new to baking, follow the recipe which you have in hand. And then add in one change at a time the next time. If you're okay with wastage, like I am, I would probably, if there is a wastage, I would convert it into a dumpling and use it for something else. So But if you don't know what to do with the wastage that has happened, then you probably want to do it one step at a time. Baking is a science, and you have to experiment with it to understand it, just like we do it in the laboratories in chemistry and physics. Okay, so now I'm going to add flour measurement. I have, again, adding 1 cup of flour to this. Sometimes when you do small quantities of baking, a large mixer like this could need to have a little bit of stirring that you have to do. And the cookie, the dough that comes out of this particular, I'm still stirring, it's still floury and it's still not formed the dough. It will be like a hard dough of chapati dough. It's hard. It's not liquid like a cake mixture. It's typically very firm. I think I just added a 1/4 cup of butter. I see a 1/4 cup here, so I might have to add a little more butter to the flour. It's not coming together. So I'm doing these experiments right in front of you so you understand that the amount of butter that has gone in is probably not just enough. So this is what you should do. There is no, for it to come together into a ball of mass, it has to be butter. Butter is the binding ingredient for most cookies. Egg is another one, but since we are not using egg, we will avoid it. Another thing that you can use to substitute for the moisture is thick yogurt, thick curd. That will become buttermilk cookies. Those will have, it will tend to get runny a bit. Those are called breakfast cookies in the US, and they're savory normally, and they're not crisp and biscuity. They have a biscuit-like texture. So they are more softer than the chewy cookies when you add buttermilk. So I'm going to run it down to the mixture again.
So could we completely butter with thick yogurt?
Sorry?
Could we completely replace the butter with thick yogurt or portion of it?
How lovely would that be if a cookie is without butter, right? Really,
I know.
one gets the texture. Like for example, butter is required to give that softness to the cookie. If you don't add butter, what will happen is you will get a papad, a cracker. You know what I'm saying? It will be brittle. It will not melt in your mouth. It will crack. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So that is what will happen when you don't add butter. So there are a lot of people who are joining. Okay. So now when you do the beating by the hand, it takes a lot more time. I love my mixer. The reason being is it just makes my work really quick. I'm done mixing. I'm going to show this to you. So this is the dough. You saw a white texture before, right? So now it's formed the dough. I'll show you. I'll just bring it together, and then you should be able to see that I've just formed a ball out of it. It is it's soft ball, not as hard as a as a bread dough. Put this down here. Done with my butter. So now that's the cookie dough. That's the basic cookie dough you have here. I'm going to show it to you. Take it in my hand. Any questions? Okay, so now I can add, this is eggless. So now if you add egg, you'll get a little chewy texture to it, a little more cake-like and chewy texture. If you don't add egg, you'll get a brittle, more crisper, buttery texture. So, and to this, now we're going to add chocolate chips. You can add ginger powder, you can add orange rind, you can add lemon, you can add, this is like a basic cookie dough. And you can mix and match flavors. You can add cocoa powder to this. You can add and you'll have double chocolate cookies. Add a half a cup of cocoa powder. If it is 1 cup of all-purpose flour, then I would add quarter cup of cocoa and 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour. So, I would just alter the flour amount a little bit. If you want more cocoa, you want more richness of cocoa, you can add more cocoa, and if butter is required to bind the dough, add the butter. And remember, if your place is moist, then if the environment, if your room is hot, humid, like you're going to be in Chennai or in Calcutta or any of the tropical weathers, then the amount of butter I added would be too much, because there is moisture in the air which can melt to bring the butter and the dough together. So now the chocolate chips are not that easy to find, and I typically like to use, now this is Boneville dark chocolate. You could use any really high quality chocolate that you want. Using really good quality chocolate really matters, because that gives the actual taste and crunch of the, it gives this beautiful taste to your mouth. Using a regular chocolate chip baking chocolate, I'm not too fond of them, although you could use them. I avoid completely using cooking chocolate, which is available. Most people think that using cooking chocolate is what is used for baking, but no, you can use regular chocolate bars, Dairy Milk, Cadbury, any of the French Lindt chocolates, orange flavored, mint flavored, add any kind of flavored chocolate to your chocolate cookie dough and you'll get that flavor. So this is dark chocolate, Boneville dark chocolate. I'm going to chop these up. So making chocolate chips is not that easy. It is not difficult at all. All you have to do is pick up that chocolate and chop. And the person who has a question. And probably if you add an egg, the amount of butter needed is less, isn't it? Yes, if you add an egg, the amount of butter that is needed is less. Or the amount of flour that you want to add, you could increase. For example, you could just add a quarter cup of oatmeal or a quarter cup of any other millet flour that you want. Or reduce the butter. That's right. So I have roughly chopped the chocolates. You can see me chopping chocolates. Since I removed the dough out of the whole thing, I'm just going to use my hands to fold it in. Oh, there's one thing that I forgot to add to this whole thing is baking powder. I was just thinking there's something that I'm missing out in this whole thing. So I'm going to run it through the mixer again and add baking powder. If you don't add baking powder, it doesn't rise as well. You could avoid baking powder. When you add baking powder, it just rises. If you don't add baking powder, it's not that it's going to do any harm. It's just not going to rise a little bit. It will just remain flat. So the baking powder helps it rise. So I'm just going to wash my hands and come back. Just going to run this dough into the mixer again and add the baking powder to the. I'm assuming that Amardeep has a question. I'm assuming that after all these experiments with flour and butter, you will update the exact recipe online since baking is a science. So the exact recipe is online. You can use that. It works very well. But I always, in a class, I believe that you have to go beyond a recipe, so you understand that if you mix and match and do this and that, it's easy, you know. I mean, you can just look at my recipe and learn. So why do I have to take a class? So when in a class, I always like to do something different from the recipe, not follow the recipe, and then see what happens. So that you know that when you do, you don't have to be scared because it's not a big deal. It's just baking, it's cooking, have fun doing it, and thank you. So that's a quarter teaspoon of baking powder. I'm using the recipe. Ideally the flour, and I'd like to add the baking powder along with the flour. Now that you see I'm adding it at the end of the process, and if I just give it another run of beans, it's not going to affect it too much. Because right here we are not expecting a cake that's going to rise evenly, and as long as it gets blended well, we should be okay. So I'm just going to another thing I have to tell you is before you start the whole preparation for cooking, it's important to preheat your oven to the degrees which is given 180, 175 degrees centigrade or 350 degrees Fahrenheit approximately. So when you're done, because the mixing of the cookie dough is really quick, it doesn't take time at all. So I'm just going
Archana?
Yeah?
How do we preheat? We do the preheating in the normal microwave convection machine?
Yes. So in a microwave convection machine, the ovens are typically smaller. So the amount of heat that circulates in it is more rapid. So the baking times could be much lesser than in a larger oven. Each oven is different. Each microwave convection oven has a different power. So our oven is something that is you will have if you're a first-time baker, then it is really important that you monitor the cookie every 5 minutes. Or a cake, if you're doing a cake, then you monitor it every 10 minutes. Because the moment you use an OTG or microwave convection oven, the baking times will differ from oven to oven. So it will take a couple of different times of experimentation to understand what is the heating capability of your oven. And once you understand the heating capability, you should be able to I'm coming to you in this. So once you understand the heating capability of the oven, you should be able to, bake more frequently, and that's the biggest hurdle which everybody faces. You follow an exact recipe, and people say it didn't bake well, it's brown, it stopped. I mean, I didn't get the texture right.
Since many years, I've been trying how should I do the preheating actually?
So preheating,
I have baked cookies earlier, but the same way as you said, I kept a watch for say every frequent minutes. So it came out well actually.
Excellent. So
No
that's very
preheating,
important
as
to
I thought
monitor.
maybe I'm not knowing how to preheat the oven.
Yeah, in fact, any new recipe that you try, if you have tried, like for example, a banana bread, you keep baking frequently, you know that it takes 20 minutes or 35 minutes to bake. But if you're making a chocolate chip cookie and you're trying it for the first time, and even if you know your oven, but you wouldn't know how that recipe reacts to the heat. So it is important that you monitor. You can't just let baking, let it bake. If you're a first-time baker, you need to monitor. Any new recipe that you try is important. Most of the instructions, Kalashree is saying, most of the instructions, manuals will have a detail, or else you can Google to check how your microwave model behaves. Well, even if you, I do agree that most manuals have instructions, but you know, recipes differ as well. And unless you actually put in, you know, this and that and then put it in the oven, with you yourself, there has to be some kind of an experience. You have to make it experiential. It takes a little bit of time and learning to understand ovens and the heat which the oven gives. Okay, another question that I have is, I see sometimes people using baking soda and vinegar and add to the mixture to bring frothy texture to the mixture. So now what I'm going to do is, before we answer more questions, I'm going to get this mixture into, this is well blended again. So now I'm going to use, these are baking sheets, which you can use anything to go into your microwave convection oven. I think you would get a smaller one like that, I think. So any kind of, even a glass bowl or aluminum sheet, anything works. If you don't have parchment paper, it's also called as butter paper in India, you can use, you can grease it with butter and dust it with flour. So grease the entire sheet with butter and dust it with flour. So that way the cookie doesn't, though the cookie has a lot of butter, it shouldn't technically get stuck to it, but it could, because the sugars and the caramel could get burnt down. So you basically want to give a protective layering to the cookie so it doesn't get burnt from the bottom. So now I have my cookie sheets here, lined with butter paper. You could just make balls. I like to use an ice cream scoop. And place the cookie there. So now it looks like an ice cream scoop. Now if you like the cookie to be large and high, like I like it, because I feel that I can crunch into it and dip into my chai or my milk, hot milk, and it doesn't just break away, so then I like it just to remain as an ice cream scoop. If you like it flat, just flatten it with your fingers. That's it. So it's about half an inch thick, approximately, and it's lemon sized. So I'm just going to scoop this. I was just hoping I don't run out of electricity today, and then my oven will stop working. And then we can't bake the cookie. Although I have baked a batch in the morning to show you how it looks. So it's important that you place the cookies because they will expand. Place them at least 1.5 inches apart. So do any of you have any more questions? I generally don't like to use vinegar. Amardeep had a question on vinegar, and butter and vinegar makes it frothy, but the vinegar gives a very different taste to the whole thing. It kind of makes it give an acid taste. I'm not very fond of adding vinegar to it, even though it helps in frothing up if you don't have Amardeep, I hope I answered your question. Very nice that you've launched. So now the baking time for this cookie could be anywhere between 10 minutes to 15 minutes. You'll have to monitor them. That will depend from oven to oven as well. So you have to make sure that you bake the cookie, you have to monitor it. As soon as it starts browning from the top, then you take it out immediately, because the cookie is hot enough, and when the cookie comes out of the oven, it continues to bake in the heat of the pan. You leave it in the pan for another 5 minutes so it continues to actually cook with that existing heat inside the cookie and the heat from the pan. If you put it in the oven a little longer than the time that it starts browning on the top, when it comes out, it will get overbaked and it will be too crumbly. It won't be as buttery as you want it to be, and it will be maybe like a soft murukku or something like that, right? So, so you have to make sure that you take it out at the correct time. So, so I have actually placed my cookies on the, I typically don't bother about the shape of my cookies. I like it uneven. It gives a natural handmade touch to it. And you can, as I said, flatten it, make it extra large. So I've given enough space to my cookie. You see, I'm not cramming it. So even if it means that it goes batch by batch into the oven, put the rest of the dough which is remaining into the refrigerator or the freezer. And you can make large batches of this and put it in the freezer. And you can take the batch out, thaw it a little bit, and put it back into the oven for baking. So, any other questions? I'm going to put this into the oven and we'll take more questions. Yeah. Most of the instructions are there. Does anybody else have questions? So I think we are can baking soda be a replacement for baking powder? See, baking soda and baking powder are all part of sodium bicarbonate, right? So when you see the ingredients in and the baking soda or baking powder, typically in India you get soda, but it is really strong, and it's not named as baking soda, it's called cooking soda. And it is really strong. So even a pinch of it would actually froth up the whole mixture. So I tend to use baking powder in all my cooking. Wherever a recipe calls on the internet for baking powder, baking soda, I just continue to use baking powder. The reason being, I just probably adjust a little more. I mean, add a little more baking powder. With experience, you'll be able to understand how much baking powder that you need to use. And maybe just if it calls for half teaspoon of baking soda and half teaspoon of baking powder, I just use 1 teaspoon of baking powder. So I don't worry about baking powder and baking soda. Both are very much made from the same cream of tartar. That is also a product which comes from sodium bicarbonate. Sodium bicarbonate, sodium aluminum sulfate, and edible starch. So this is what baking powder contains. I think baking soda contains a little less of these ingredients in proportion, but tend to work. I mean, this should work for all the recipes. Anything else? I was this class informative. We're just going to be waiting for the cookies, but I can show you the cookies that came out from the batch. I baked in the morning. This is a cookie that came out. I like it nice and high. That came out, and it's brown because I added jaggery to it. And also there are a few. You will notice there are a few that will get over brown by the side, and this is because they were sitting in the corners of the oven. So it is important to try to place all your cookies in such a way that they get even heat. So my oven works differently. I mean, it has heat is more towards the edge, and the edges tend to get burnt a little more. So I tend to place them a little closer. Since I pack, I'm just showing this to you. Now I didn't line this with paper, so it tends to get a little darker at the bottom. Did you notice that? Yeah. So I just didn't line it with. So these are the experiments that you tend to make to understand that that it's important to line so you don't burn, and also it doesn't stick to the bottom. The material you use also matters a little bit. If aluminum or glass, all of them have different heating capabilities. Some get heated up fast. If it's a heavy bottom thing, then it gets heated evenly and tend to burn will be less. If it is a light bottom, if it is really light, then it tends to catch the heat a little faster, and it could tend to bake a little more quicker than you expect it to. Thanks, Ruchi. It looks yum. It does taste yum, chocolate chip. I'm going to break it open to show you. This is with egg. Once the other one comes out, let's see. It has texture in it. I mean, it's a little soft. It's not biscuity. It won't crack, break like with the noise. Yeah. Yes, instead of jaggery, you could add brown sugar as well. Brown sugar is nothing but caramelized sugar. So you could add, and make sure the recipe sometimes on the internet could be really sweet. So the first time around, if you like a lot of sweetness, that's okay. I tend to cut down on the sweetness a lot, and I use a little less. If you notice, the current recipe has much less sugar than the one that is online. Thanks, Yoshi. So, you want to wait for the cookies to be done? Or shall we exit the class and we're all done? Do you have any more questions? I can take any more questions. Else we should be, I think, all through. None of you able to talk? I can hear you all if you talk. No. Do we need to put the tray over a rack in the microwave oven? Yes, it would be better, because direct contact again with the material on the top would tend to make the tray get heated faster, which means your baking will get done faster. It's good to bake at a lower temperature. If you think that your cookie is getting browned way too fast and it's undercooked, which means you need to lower your temperature. Yeah, if your cookie is getting browned and then you notice, yes, my cookie is brown from the top, that's what the recipe said. But when you take it out and allow it to cool and you see it is still undercooked, then you need to lower the temperature of your oven and increase the baking time. So these are experiments that you need to monitor. So these are guidelines given in the in each recipe all over the world. Guidelines are given that you set the temperature to 175, between 175 degrees centigrade to 180. And based on your oven, you should be able to take a call. I mean, maybe what you can do as an experiment is just place one cookie inside the center of the oven and check how long does it take to bake. Maybe the next time around when you bake, you should be able to get the right setting for the temperature. Okay.
I have a question.
Okay. Excellent. So I'm going to, if you all want to hang around to see how the other cookies turned out, it's still baking. I can see it in the oven. Maybe I should turn the camera to the oven so you all can see that it is baking. I'm just going to do that. Let me just turn the tripod. There you go. The oven, it's in the oven. I'm not sure if you can see it. There you go. the cookies are baking in the oven. Can you all see it? Excellent. So
Yeah.
yeah. So that's that. So that's a big oven that I have. Wall oven. It's going to take a little more. I don't see browning happening. I can see the smell. It's great. So I think I'm going to end the session now. If you have any more questions. I have a question regarding dough consistency. I tried once and the dough was crumbly. Why is that? When the dough is crumbly, add a little more butter. Maybe, as I said, it also depends upon the temperature of the place that you're cooking, the entire atmosphere. If it is cold, if you cook your thing in winter, then if it was in winter, then it tends to absorb less moisture, and hence you might think that a little more butter is required, or there could be less butter, or the flour which you're using could be different. There are different things to understanding all these sciences. So it could be a really high grain flour which tends to take in more moisture, which means you need more butter. So you can add a combination of butter and yogurt, thick yogurt. You can try it out. Okay, thanks everyone. I hope you enjoyed the class.
Thank you so much.
Thank you as well for joining, and it'll be good to see you all probably for the next session as well. You can always see the video of this on YouTube. It'll be saved in YouTube, and I will also send you all an email of the recipe, and it'll be posted, updated recipe which I did today in class. It'll be posted up on the internet, on my website. Okay? Thanks everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.